Welcome to Literary Libations with Librarians. And this time is one of my favorites. It's the season for spooky spine chillers and thrillers. And as we share some of our favorite creepy titles, there are different ways that you can get your hands on them. The first is to simply call your local branch of the Monroe County Library System and speak to the staff there, and they'll be more than happy to assist you. If you'd like to do it yourself, you can see our online catalog web address is on your screen now, and that'll allow you to request physical versions of the titles we talk about. And you'll also see that some of our titles are available through one of our two digital apps. So you could maybe download it as an audiobook or read it as a digital ebook. So you can see we have Libby and we also have Hoopla, and you definitely want to check those out. For Hoopla, one of the great things about it is if you see a title with a lightning bolt next to it, and almost all of them have lightning bolts, it means that there's no wait. Multiple people can have that title checked out at the same time. I am Jennifer Graneski. I am the Dundee Area Branch's supervisor. And our question to kick us off this week is, what fears or phobias do you have? And mine is definitely a fear of heights. I don't like high things. I can endure it if I have to. If I absolutely have to get something done and I am the person that has to go up on the ladder, I'll do it. But there are times when I think I'm braver than I am. For example, my parents came to visit me when I lived in California, and we thought it would be a good idea to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge. And we did not make it across the Golden Gate Bridge, not because we were tired, but because it is very, very high. And that was very upsetting for me. So we turned around and came back, and that was fine. Like I said, I'll do things if I have to, but otherwise I want to avoid it. Also, whoever created those steps that you can see through to the floor, don't do that. Just cover that up. I don't need to see where the ground is. I'll just keep going up without that information. So there's my fear or phobia. Also with us this week is Jessica Otto, our head of collections. And what fears or phobias do you have, Jessica?
So I'm pretty sure I mentioned this like last year. I still have this phobia of the alien abduction. It's a phobia / fascination because it's like a train wreck. It's horrifying and scary, but yeah, I can't look away. I can't stop wanting to read books or watch things about it. And since I've had corn in the field around my house this year, I don't know, I just have this wild association between alien abductions and corn because of crop circles. And it's got to be corn because they can't do it in like wheat or soybeans because that's too, like they can't hide out there. It's too short. So yeah, the corn in my field has scared me when I'm going to get my dogs at night. So it's aliens or some children of the corn situation. I don't know. It's scary. I'm also scared of things that have a phobia of things that happen suddenly and without my control. Like Pillsbury biscuit cans terrify me. The little puff of air thing that shoots out into your eye at the eye doctor, that terrifies me. I recently had like a full-on sobbing meltdown at the eye doctor about that. My logic brain was telling me, Jess, listen, it's okay. You can do this. You've done a lot more scary things than this. But I don't know, when you have these phobias, it's just like your logic brain doesn't matter. The phobia is in control. It's like another being that lives inside you and takes control, and you're powerless to it. So yeah, those are my phobias.
And that's a very good explanation of a phobia, because like I knew the Golden Gate Bridge was not going to collapse, nor was I going to suddenly, leap over the side or anything, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't go any farther. Thank you, Jessica. Also with us this week is Adrienne Childress, who is a reference librarian at our Bedford branch. And what fears or phobias do you have, Adrienne?
I was going to say needles, but I've suddenly developed a phobia of deja vu. I feel like we've done this before, but but no, definitely needles. Don't like the look of them. Look away when I get shots, but
Yeah, needles. Not my favorite. I can handle needles though, but not needles up high. Don't try and give me a shot on a bridge. All right, and we will go ahead and start sharing our scary titles, and I will ask Jessica to kick us off.
My first title is the book that author Stephen King called the best popular novel to be published in America since The Godfather. Red Dragon by Thomas Harris is the horrifying classic that introduced the world to Hannibal Lecter. The story opens in the summer of 1980. Two families have been slaughtered 1 month apart in two different cities, both under the full moon. Jack Crawford, the agent in charge of the Behavioral Science Unit of the FBI, has come to Florida to convince his former protege, Will Graham, to join the hunt for the monster responsible for these crimes. Graham was once a revered FBI profiler. He possesses a unique intellectual ability that gives him incredible insight into the mind of criminals. As Graham enters a crime scene, the image of a silver pendulum swinging in darkness enters his mind, taking him back in time and allowing him to vividly reconstruct the crime as it occurred and identify with the mindset and the mentality of those who committed the crime. It was this unique ability that 5 years earlier allowed Graham to capture the cannibalistic serial killer Hannibal Lecter. Graham was gravely wounded by Lecter and spent months recuperating in the hospital. Upon his release from the hospital, Graham resigned from the FBI and started a new life in the Florida Keys. But now Graham's old life has come back to haunt him. Graham desperately wants to stay in Florida with his family, but he knows that he is the FBI's best chance at catching this killer, dubbed the Tooth Fairy, before the next full moon, when another family could meet a grisly end. After visiting the crime scenes in Atlanta and Birmingham, Graham knows that he is searching for a killer like no other. He realizes that the only way to catch this monster is to consult the mind of a monster from his own past, his nemesis, Hannibal Lecter. Equal parts disturbing and tragic, Red Dragon will grip you from the very first page and take you on a relentless ride as Graham races against the clock to save a third family from certain death. This book is the first of 4 books written by Harris that features Hannibal Lecter. In the fascinating foreword written in 2001, Harris explains the circumstances that led him to write this book and to create one of the most infamous literary villains of all time. The book was adapted into 2 different film versions, the first in 1986 as Manhunter, and then again in 2002 under the book's title, Red Dragon. It was also the basis for the popular television series Hannibal. So even if you are familiar with the basic plot of this book from any of those movie or TV adaptations, it is still well worth your time to read this book and explore some of these characters in further detail. I had personally seen all 3 of those screen adaptations before deciding to read the book. And after finishing the Hannibal TV series, which is phenomenal, by the way, I needed more Hannibal Lecter content. And so I decided to read the book, and even knowing what was going to happen to certain characters, I was still just captivated and horrified and just shook. There are scenes from this book that will never leave my mind. So if you are looking for an intense psychological thriller that is not for the faint of heart, Red Dragon will not disappoint. As the New York Times book review says, Red Dragon is an engine designed for one purpose: to make the pulse pound, the heart palpitate, the fear glands secrete.
Nice review, New York Times.
Yeah. My second title, Zombie Town, is a fun introduction to the zombie genre for the younger horror fans by one of my all-time favorite authors, R.L. Stine. Now, I think we can all agree that zombies are huge right now. They are everywhere. Books, movies, TV. As Stine says in the book's introduction, the living dead are living it up big time. Our story begins on a Saturday afternoon when 12-year-old Mike is hanging out with his best friend and neighbor, Karen. Their planned day of skateboarding is ruined by the arrival of rain clouds and thunder. Karen sees this as an opportunity to head to the local movie theater to check out the new horror film, Zombie Town, that all the kids at school want to see. all the kids at school except for Mike, who is terrified of scary movies. He really, really doesn't want to go to this film, but he's afraid of what Karen will think of him if he refuses to go with her. So reluctantly, he agrees to go with Karen if she agrees to pay for the popcorn, that is. When Mike and Karen take their seats at the theater, Mike starts to realize there is something wrong. This movie is a huge hit, yet he and Karen are the only people in the theater. Then he starts to hear a low creaking sound, growing louder and louder. He shares his concerns with Karen, but she brushes him off. The movie is starting now. On the screen, 3 kids walking through a park, unaware that a pack of hungry zombies are waiting for them in the bushes. As the movie zombies lumber slowly toward their unsuspecting victims, the movie screen goes totally dark. The only light in the theater is the red glow from the exit sign. Mike and Karen look up at the projectionist booth to find out what happened, but the room is empty. They try to leave the theater, only to discover that all the theater doors are locked. Mike and Karen are trapped. They start to hear a low shuffling noise and a moaning sound. The best friends turn just in time to realize that the movie zombies have somehow come off the screen and into the theater, hungry, not just for popcorn, but for Mike and Karen's brains. According to his introduction, R.L. Stine came up with the idea for this book when he went to see a movie with his wife and he discovered that they were the only people in that theater. The experience creeped him out. To quote Stine, I started asking scary questions. Why are we the only ones in here? Is this some kind of trap? What if the doors are locked? What if we're locked in here? It's too dark and too quiet. Something horrifying is about to happen. Now, I think it's safe to say that Stine survived his scary theater experience, but can we say the same for Mike and Karen? Well, for the answer to that question, you'll have to read the book. Now, even though this book was originally published in 2001, you may start hearing a lot about this. I recently learned that a movie version of Zombie Town is currently in production, and it's not just any movie though. According to Entertainment Weekly, this film will be the first time that Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase are appearing on screen together since 1991. So with those two talents involved, you know that this movie is going to be all kinds of spooky zombie fun. So I highly recommend this book to fans of horror, those who are just into zombies, and definitely to fans of R.L. Stine, whether it's Goosebumps, Fear Street, any of his great stuff. At just 60 pages, this book is a super fast read that moves at a very quick pace. It can probably be read in one setting. So if you were looking for some spooky fun that is not quite as intense as my first title, give Zombie Town a chance. As School Library Journal says, Stine delivers the hilarity and horror that readers love.
Thank you, Jessica. I did not know that Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase were getting together in a movie again and in an R.L. Stine movie. So yes, that's awesome.
I'm very excited for this. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And let's have Adrian share his spooky titles next.
Sure. Okay. I guess we will start with The Deep, a 2015 horror title from Nick Cutter. For those of you who are not aware, Nick Cutter is a pen name of Craig Davidson. So if you're familiar with his work, such as Saturday Night Ghost Club, which despite the title is not a horror book, same author. So under his alias of Nick Cutter, he wrote The Troop in 2014, and he followed it up with his second horror entry, The Deep, in 2015. This story features a Dr. Luke Nelson. It opens with him on a boat headed out to the Mariana Trench. the world is currently suffering from an epidemic that causes dementia and forgetfulness. Eventually, your brain degrades until you forget to eat and breathe, and then you die. His brother is a scientist who is stationed on a lab down at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, where they've discovered a new substance they're calling ambrosia that has the potential to cure the disease sweeping the world. And after they receive a video asking Luke to come, he sets off. When he arrives, he finds out his brother, in fact, never sent any such video. And the horror sort of takes off from there. It's claustrophobic environments. There's a lot of different horror angles working on. There's some kind of very close trauma. Dr. Luke keeps suffering from flashbacks related to his son that was abducted years ago. There's some family abuse that went on that gets called back on. There are, of course, the supernatural elements that go on. It throws a lot at you. It's really good. I thought it was better than The Troop, if you were a fan of The Troop. But yeah, so that's The Deep by Nick Cutter. And then for my second title, I went with the short story turned graphic novel, A Study in Emerald, written in 2003 by Neil Gaiman. This is a pastiche of A Study in Scarlet from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It follows a war veteran who takes up lodgings with an unnamed detective, and together they go about solving a murder of a dignitary. It kind of wears its heart on its sleeve that it is a very faithful adaptation of A Study in Scarlet, but with aliens. And let's see, if you're looking to read it, it was originally available in Shadows Over Baker Street from 2003, which was a compilation of other authors' takes on the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He later republished it in Fragile Things in 2006. And then in 2018, Dark Horse adapted it into a graphic novel format for those of you who like graphic novels. Even if you've read A Study in Scarlet, he manages to work in quite a few plot twists beyond just the aliens, especially since one of the dignitary murder they're solving is of an alien. So it's a fun read. There's a lot of twists and turns you may not see coming. I would definitely say check it out if you're into that sort of thing.
I agree. That's when you sent in that title, Adrian, I went back and looked it up and I was like, I did read that. It's been a number of years. And so I read my Goodreads review and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it enough that I was like, I wish it had more. Like, I feel like they could have done more set in that same world. But to the best of my knowledge, they have not.
Well, at the same time that the graphic novel was released, Gaiman actually said he's got some ideas and he hopes to start working on a sequel. So fingers crossed in the next couple years.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. Thank you. For my titles, my first one is The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. And I'm going to start with my little advertisement for Paul Tremblay, because I discovered him when he wrote A Head Full of Ghosts, which is a dark family drama set during a reality TV show with possible demon possession. And I really, really, really loved that book. He also wrote The Cabin at the End of the World, which is a deeply upsetting, possibly apocalyptic novel. I don't want to give too much away. That is being turned into an M. Night Shyamalan film, and I believe they're changing the title to A Knock at the Cabin. So I'm curious what they're going to do with that, because like I said, that was definitely an upsetting horror novel for me. He also wrote Survivor Song, which is a one-night story set during a zombie pandemic. So we all have experienced a pandemic now, and he definitely draws from that. And then he also did Devil's Rock, which is kind of a ghost mystery. So Tremblay does a lot of different things in the horror genre. So no matter what he writes, I'm going to pick it up. Sometimes I love it. Sometimes I am less than in love with it. But almost every one of his books, I can give you a basic plot line of, which means that it's stuck with me for some reason. So the Pallbearers Club is definitely not what I expected. It is a slow-moving tale of toxic friendship, medical trauma, addiction, arrested development, and vampire folklore, all mixed into one. And the focus is on the friendship between Art Barbara and Mercy. And the book itself, I'm going to share my screen again, has an interesting setup because it's written as Art Barbara's memoir of his life. But then Mercy comes along throughout the book, and hers is the writing that is always in red. So I just gave a couple of samples from the book, but throughout the entire novel, you're getting both Art's perspective and Mercy's perspective throughout the entire thing. And the Pallbearers Club title comes from the fact that when Art was in high school, he was trying to figure out how to beef up his college applications. And they kept telling him, you need to be in a club. You need to be in a club. And Art is not a club kind of guy. So he saw it in a local newspaper that there was a group elsewhere in the country that had created a pallbearers club where they would go and be the pallbearers for people who had nobody else in their lives. So sometimes they were people who were unknown. Sometimes they simply didn't have family in the area. So he decided that's what he would do. And he started the Pallbearers Club. And needless to say, it didn't go great. But Mercy saw the poster for it. And even though she wasn't in high school, she showed up to one of the first times that they went to the funeral home to be the pallbearers. And she showed up with her Polaroid camera to take pictures of the body because she believed that her camera could show the spirit of the body. So that's how they meet. They are immediately friends in a very weird sort of relationship. And then the entire book shows the progression of their lives as they meet at important points later on. And as you're reading this, it's odd, it's weird. There's a scene I'm never going to forget about a creepy chest of drawers. Yes, a chest of drawers. Like, how do you make a chest of drawers creepy? Thanks, Paul Tremblay. But it is, and it's just creepy. And you read the whole thing, and it's up to you to figure out, are Art and Mercy in a life-sucking relationship? Are they vampires? Are they just unhealthy and toxic? What's going on here? And that is the story. And I read it and I didn't know what to think of it. I still kind of don't, but it stuck with me. There are visuals in that story that have stuck with me that I'm not going to give away. And the story itself still makes me go, huh. So there you go. Paul Tremblay, Pallbearers Club, weirdly upsetting. Thanks, Paul Tremblay. Thanks for that. My other title is much more of a straightforward Gothic thriller. And let's go back. It is House of Hunger. This one was just released within the last month by Alexis Henderson. And I was able to read it a little bit early, and I don't have my thank you in here, but thank you to NetGalley for the digital advanced reader's copy and to the publisher. So House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson is it's just got one of my favorite settings. It's gothic and fantastic and historical. So you get to experience this gothic setting, probably Eastern European somewhere if I had to guess. And I know that the author based it on legends of an actual countess about whom rumors were spread that she tried to stay young by bathing in the blood of young women. And she is an actual historical character. Whether the rumors are true or not, probably not. She had a lot of men who didn't like her. And so it was probably more of a let's bring her down with these rumors thing. But I don't know. And I can't think of her name right now. But anyhow, so that's where the author kind of got the story from. In this one, Marion Shaw is basically a street rat. She lives in the southern portion of the kingdom. She has nothing going for her. Her brother is an addict and is abusive now. And so she sees an advertisement for a blood maiden. And what blood maidens are is they are indentured to the upper class, and that upper class takes their blood and consumes it because it's healing. And so those in the north from the different houses, and the House of Hunger is the one that Marion ends up at, will bring in young women whose blood has these healing property, and they indenture them for at least 7 years. And after that, they're supposed to let them go and give them a pension, and you should have an amazing life after that. And while you are a blood maiden, you're living in these castles, and this is your home, and you're treated well, and you have plenty of food. So Marion sees the advertisement, decides that she's going to try it. She is accepted. She ends up in the House of Hunger. And you think that this is like a Cinderella story. You know, she's got everything she needs, all the clothes she wants, plenty of food, and things, of course, take a very dark turn. There's palace intrigue. So if you like those sorts of novels, there's a lot of palace intrigue because she's not the only blood maiden. Most of the wealthy people have more than one. So she is one of 6. Within the blood maidens, there's their own hierarchy of who's most important, who has the most privileges. And then they start to find out what's really going on and what is happening in the House of Hunger. I'm not going to give it away, but it is horrifying. And so then your question is, once you know beyond just this sort of version of vampirism, once you know that there's more going on than that, then the question is Marion going to survive? So it's less than 300 pages. I kind of felt it could be longer because I wanted more palace intrigue, but it is a good story. If you like Gothic stories, if you like palace intrigue with a little bit of horror thrown in there, this is a good one to get started. Alexis Henderson also wrote The Year of the Witching, which is fabulous. I won't go into that, but thumbs up. I'm going to read probably everything she writes for quite a while now. So House of Hunger, if you want a Gothic story. Paul Bearer's Club, if you need something different in your life. That's probably the closest I can get because it's hard to describe. So thank you to those of you who have listened. And thank you to Jessica and Adrian for sharing your spooky titles with us this week. And we hope to be back in a couple weeks sharing books that we wish had sequels. And we hope you'll listen then. Thank you. Bye.